Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Aaron Levitats on the line, and he's managing partner over at Cotel Investment Management, and this interview is part of our iConnections Miami series, where we bring you the best of those that attended and participated in iConnections over in Miami. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we got a lot to talk about today, and I'm particularly interested in this topic. I don't feel like I've had it on the show in a while, so we're going to talk about overlooked opportunities in Israel's capital markets. But before we get into that, first, tell me a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into this business? Like, where'd that start for you?
That's a great question. I've been traveling back and forth between Israel. I'm from Miami originally. I've been traveling back and forth between Israel for a good chunk of my life. And I actually started my career as an attorney at a big law firm in Washington, D.C., doing capital markets, M&A type work. And I've really been exposed to the Israeli economy from many different angles. And have deep relationships in the Israeli economy that run from the public markets, which is what we can speak about today, which is what my business is in, but also in Israeli technology and venture capital, which is kind of what people know about Israel, startup nation, quote unquote. So I've been very interested in the Israeli economy. I have a lot of conviction in the opportunities, and so I just, through time and different opportunities, we came to build Cotel Investment Management. And thankfully, I've left law into finance. So that's been a fun transition, not an uncommon one, but yeah. So, and now I travel back and forth between the States and Israel. So,
what attracted you? We'll get into the investment part, but I'm just curious, what attracted you to that region and that market, like initially, to where you were like, and this kind of dovetails into what we're talking about overall, about maybe some things are overlooked, or maybe that other people aren't seeing some things you do. What attracted you to that?
Well, I guess there's a few reasons. Obviously, Israel is in the news for a variety of different reasons, and it's a very emotional and hot button topic. Unfortunately, because I think that there's incredible opportunities as business people, but also not just as business people, but having food, just sitting on the streets and meeting the people and speaking to the people. So what ultimately attracted me was a few things, having family there and that lives in Israel, so I was able to see it from a different angle and a different side. But also I studied going back to high school, and in university I actually studied history in undergrad with a focus on Middle East, and I was actually started my career before law and diplomacy, trying to focus on ways to bring peace, as in an idealistic, as a young idealist, let's say.
What age was that? What age was that? I'm curious.
When I was
just roughly
20, I was 21.
To be
and
that age again, right, Aaron? To be that age
right,
again.
Totally.
Go ahead, continue. I can't. I love it. So
I was young and idealistic, and I still am. I'm a little bit older and still idealistic. But really ultimately found that the best way to build relations between people is through business, what we'll call business diplomacy, or covenantal capitalism, we could call it. So different angles. And I just started to build relationships and found that obviously the engine of Israel's economy, the most well-known part of Israel's economy, is tech and VC. But through that, I started to develop a thesis around other opportunities in Israel's public markets. So I guess what ultimately got me interested was wanting to see, let's say in a partially naive but also idealistic way, a better future, and having a knowledge base and relationships in the region, and saying, wow, there's real opportunity here that people don't know about. Because if you turn off your TV screens, right, the BBC, CNN, Fox News, I don't care what you're looking at, you get one message of Israel, unfortunately, and it's one of conflict. And the reality is, unfortunately, Israel is in a challenging neighborhood, and I'm not interested in necessarily the politics of it or the geopolitics, but the reality is that there are opportunities as business people that are overlooked because people are caught up in headlines. So I'm not interested in that, only obviously as it relates to the underlying business opportunities. But that was something that, I seek to transcend all of that with the business that we have. So.
Can you talk a little bit about like what makes the public capital markets unique, or even structurally different from other developed markets? Like, what makes it different?
Yeah, so specifically what makes it unique, obviously Israel has a robust and developed capital markets, public capital markets. We're talking the stock market and the bond market. And like we said, when people think of Israel, they think of tech and DC, and for good reason, because Israel is a leader in defense technology and cybersecurity and AI and other innovations. However, people don't know that for example, the Israeli stock market has been one of the best, if not the best performing stock market in the entire world, actually since October 7th. I actually have the numbers right in front of me that the leading Israeli stock indices, the TA35 and TA125, are up about 140% since October 7th, 2023. And compares that to the S&P, which is up about 63%, and the NASDAQ about 80%. So the stock market performs very well. It's a robust investable economy, but overlooked because it's a relatively small market. It doesn't fit neatly into a bucket. It's neither emerging market, nor is it one of it's not a European country, or it's not the US, it's not China, it's not Japan. So it kind of sneaks between, it's hidden really. Now, with respect to the structure, really to answer your question, we focus at Coatell. We have a fund, a US fund that focuses on the Israeli bond market. So there, obviously, like we said, people know about tech. They know a little bit about the stock market, but no one knows anything about the Israeli bond market. And Israel's bond market is unique in that it's the only country in the entire world where it's really close to exclusively. It's really bonds are exclusively traded on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. They're what's called exchange traded, as opposed to being OTC, over the counter, where you have to go through an opaque and fragmented network of broker dealers in order to buy and sell bonds. So in Israel, issuers are directly listing their bonds on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. So that creates daily pricing, completely transparent pricing and liquidity dynamics, real-time, centralized order book. And as a trader, as a money manager, you can look and go right to the exchange and see, and you can buy and sell very seamlessly. And what that allows for, I guess, is kind of that underlying structure. Like I said, Israel is unique. It's the only country in the entire world where it's like that. Every other country has at least a portion, if not most of the market being OTC, and the U.S. is almost exclusively OTC. Now, along with the unique structure, Israel's local investor base is really unique, and it's actually overlooked and underallocated globally. So less than 1% of Israeli corporate bonds denominated in the local currency in shekels are owned by international investors, and less than 8% of government bonds are owned by international investors. Said otherwise, over 99% of the corporate bond market is owned by Israelis. So it's actually very domestic. It's a truly domestic market. And, the reason me and you met, Adam, is because we were at the iConnections conference, right? I'm at the iConnections conference meeting with allocators, and people will go and turn over rocks across the entire world looking for dislocations in the market, looking for things that are not correlated to the rest of the global economy. And here we have a market that is truly domestic. Its flows in the market and its behavior is very domestic, and that it has its own independent economic drivers. The Bank of Israel has its own independent monetary policy, and obviously the local politics and geopolitics will shape it. But you have investment grade issuers owned and operated, I guess, or the debt is owned by Israelis. So you don't have international capital coming in and changing the pricing dynamics. And if we put the fact that the bonds are exchange traded, the fact that it's overlooked and underallocated globally, and we add in a third component, the third component being that the behavior in the local market is driven by a massive domestic savings system. So Israel is unique, and actually on a per capita basis has the highest mandatory pension savings rate in the entire world.
Wow.
So there's about $1 trillion managed in Israel of retirement money that's actually grown on average, about 20 to 22% annually. And that pool of capital, $1 trillion, it has to be deployed for the most part domestically, and over 50% of those assets are deployed in the local bond market. So if we put it all together, you have a unique market structure that's globally different. You have the fact that it's a domestic market because international participants they're not participating in the international investors are not participating in the market. And you have a robust and liquid investor base in the market, in that you have these pension and retirement assets that are guaranteed buyers. They're really forced buyers of the debt if you're an active trader, if you're, let's say you're a hedge fund manager, which is what we are, in that environment, we really find that there are repeatable mispricings and repeatable opportunities to go long short and really achieve excess returns beyond what you would expect in U.S. fixed income, certainly with less leverage. But there's real opportunities, and it presents a diversification opportunity for all the reasons I mentioned for U.S. and international investors.
I'm curious, just a slight detour here. You mentioned iConnections, and that is where we met and where you were at originally. Have you participated in the past? By the way, this was my first year covering the conference, and I was just like super pleasantly surprised. Have you been part of that community or attended the events in the past? I'm just curious, and what was your experience like?
Yeah, no, I actually had a great experience. It was our first time going to the conference.
You were a newbie too then. Love it. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're a newbie. It was really fun. I loved it. I thought it was really awesome being able just to walk the floor and meet thought leaders and see all the different funds and the different ways that, there's a bunch of different ways to skin the cat, as they say, right? Just seeing how different fund managers approach trying to create alpha and add value to their clients' portfolios. I loved it. It was really great also getting to meet with allocators. Think about what are people seeing in the market? How do investors, approach, the current market and whatnot, and being able to speak. I can tell you with certainty, we were the only fund. Obviously, there are many long, short equity funds and people doing different things. But I can tell you we were the only Israel bond fund at the conference, which was really fun and unique, and it was definitely a conversation starter at a minimum.
Yeah, for sure. I was pleasantly surprised, like the type of people and the amount that were all in one spot. I was like, man, how'd they get, other than getting a bunch of New Yorkers down when it was down to Miami when it's super cold, than that piece, I'm like, all right, that makes sense. But so tell us a little bit more about your fund. So Coatell Investment Management, and maybe also talk about like who and what type of investors are typically a good fit to work with you and your team.
Yeah, so we have, like I said, we have a fund focused on the Israeli bond market, and the type of investors that we look at, I guess, would be, high net worth individuals, family offices, those looking for excess returns in fixed income that would also seek diversification, low correlation to the U.S. bond market. And I think that pretty much sums it up at a high level, what it is that the type of people we partner with, and we seek to provide high risk adjusted returns with, low correlation and outperformance of U.S. fixed income.
How do people get involved? Like, how do people connect? How do they follow up? How do they get involved? Definitely, we'll put some links and things in the show notes, and we want people to follow up.
Yeah, happy to reach out. You can find us at Coatell Investment Management on LinkedIn. You can reach out on our website, which is www.coatellim.com. Yeah, reach out there. You can shoot me an email, which is Aaron at my, the domain coatellim.com. And just would love to connect. We have a blog on our website. I post on LinkedIn fairly frequently. Sharing, we spoke about overlooked opportunities, right? Kind of revealing some of the overlooked aspects of the Israeli markets, and would love any sort of engagement, and folks should feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Final question here, Aaron. It's April 2026, just to kind of timestamp that, April 16th, day after tax day in the U.S. What kind of things are you looking at right now in the market as it relates to your fund or otherwise? Like what's on your mind? What kind of conversations are you having?
It's a great question. I appreciate you time-stamping it because
I timestamp. I did that for you on purpose, not because I don't want people like, you know how people are. I'm like, April 16th, 2026.
April
it's
16th,
8:24 Standard Time.
Totally.
Go ahead.
Yeah, totally. This week, you've had the markets are up. Everyone's feeling nice and flush. If we spoke a week ago, it probably wouldn't have been the same. But obviously, right now, there's a ceasefire, or there's negotiations ongoing with the Americans and the Iranians. And, Israel is obviously right in the middle of that, what's going on with the war in the region. I actually tend to take a slightly different perspective. I'm not so short-term in the way that I think. Obviously, you have to be mindful you have to be mindful of the changing dynamics, the geopolitics. Sure. We have an election coming up. In Israel. So that obviously is going to drive the market. However, one of the things that I'm really focused on, and what I tell investors all the time is, and I think this is what I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, speaking about the performance of the stock market since October 7th, there's numerous data points that we could look at that indicate that what you would think is that since October 7th, the Israeli economy has screeched to a halt, it's stalled, it's actually performed poorly. But in fact, just this morning, the Israeli shekel to dollar exchange rate is the strongest it's been in over 30 years. It broke three shekels to the dollar just this morning. And the question is why? Why is the shekel strengthening? Why is the stock market one of the top performers in the entire world? Why has actually Israel's risk premium gone down? The bonds Israeli 10-year is quite low compared to the U.S. 10-year historically. The question is why, and the answer is because over the past 2.5 years, while Israel has been on your social media screens and your television screens for all the wrong reasons, what's quietly happening behind the scenes is Israel's risk premium is decreasing significantly. People are repricing Israel because Israel has built this robust, developed economy over the past, let's say 30, 35 years, since the early 1990s. And they've done it in a very dangerous region, under the threat of terrorists and regimes on the borders, and obviously with the threat of war looming over their head. And while in the short term, it's been a rocky ride over the past couple of years to deal with those threats. And the reality is Israel has fundamentally reshaped the future of the region. We're just in the middle of that reshaping, hopefully towards the end of it. I really hope towards the end of it. But what I really anticipate in the years ahead, and I'm glad you timestamped this, is strengthening ties between those that want to see a more prosperous Middle East in the future, the Gulf states, and also, India as well. And I think that there are going to be real opportunities that emerge out of let's say, the instability in the short term. So yes, I can't say what's going to happen, 4 weeks from today with the war. Will there be more war? Will there be a ceasefire? Will there be a peace agreement? I have no idea. But what I do know, and what the markets are pricing, is a better future, and they're repricing Israel's risk given everything that's occurred over the past 2.5 years. And something that we're really excited about. I think that what we're building at Kotel is, it's been hard, certainly over the past 2.5 years, but there's real opportunity, and we're really excited about the future of where things are heading. And I'm in Israel all the time. I have to give this plug. So if any of the listeners want to come to Israel, if you've never been, it's not what you see on your TV screens, I will personally take you to the Central Market, the Shuk Machne Yehuda in Jerusalem. We'll have delicious food. We'll meet the people. And it's a very special place. And we can be human in a world that needs more humanity. So
amazing. For everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put some links in the show notes so that you can connect. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters, then definitely hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Yes, you heard me correct. Each and every day, we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way on your journey as well. So hit that subscribe or follow button. And Aaron, man, thanks again for coming on. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Adam. Really appreciate it.